don't know the difference.
Okay.
Okay, well, now it's recording.
You must consent, and I just consented.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So, similar to yesterday, I think we're recording now. If you could introduce yourself, and then I kind of just want to get to know of kind of like where you started and where like kind of yesterday was good, like your life transitions and going into college, and then we'll go from there again.
Sure. That sounds good. Just to be clear, we're starting at the beginning because we're kind of like erasing yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So starting with high school, let me minimize one last word thing. I just put them all away or they're going to be distracting me.
I feel you.
So, yeah. But so from high school, I grew up in the Milwaukee area, specifically in New Berlin and Waukesha County, and went to high school in Waukesha, and then got into UW-Madison and decided to go there. Initially, I was thinking like, I'm going to go far away and apply to a school in Ohio and 2 in Minnesota, and then ended up dating somebody that was going to UW-Milwaukee and was like, oh, okay, I guess actually I could go closer. And so went to Madison. And Madison was really different than I expected. I think everybody's like told certain things about like what growing up is like, and to be honest, my first semester was really, really hard. And I try to be transparent or like advocate for transparency about like mental health and wellness. And that was the first time that I like knew that I was going through like a major depressive like period or episode in my life. And it was a really big struggle. I got through it with the support of my family, friends that I had made before college, a couple of friends I made during college, and then also sought out therapy for the first time, I think. I think that was the first time I ever went to therapy, which really helped because, you know, that transition to college can be really difficult. And I think a lot of people don't expect it, but just so you know, university health professionals do expect it. And so I was able to find like a group therapy group with other women around my age who were going through similar circumstances, and that was tremendously helpful as well.
I'm glad that you were able to have that resource on campus. What would you say? You said it's like not what you expected, and so what would you say was some of the things that maybe caught you off guard or caused you to have like a rough first semester?
Sure. I think I had been fairly coddled or like sheltered in how I was raised, and like just being really close to my family. Like I wasn't so ready to just like put them aside and like go party. Like my family also doesn't really drink all that much, and so I was on a floor and on a campus, or on a floor in a dorm on a campus, all that were very like drinking heavy, like really a big part of the culture there. And I didn't drink that much, and my boyfriend at the time didn't drink at all, and so I felt uncomfortable with that. And in general, I think I just went in with like illusions of like, oh, my roommate's gonna be my best friend, and like, you know, we'll all continue to be friends and whatever. And to be totally honest, like I had also gone to Catholic schools K through 12, and so I had met like a few people who were different than me, like not just from a faith-based perspective, but like yeah, there were a lot of good things that were different too. Like I didn't really know about the differences between like progressive versus conservative, and so that was really cool to like get to meet a lot of people like that. And I today am in my 30s and I'm very progressive, but had been around mostly conservative people and was always just kind of like, oh, okay, like this is how it is. So that was a breath of fresh air going to Madison and finding out like, wow, there are all these different perspectives, and like that's a good thing. But I'd say the roommate thing being away from family and like the extreme party culture, it was a big shock. And going
Mm-hmm.
from being like one person in a smaller high school, like my high school was for sure under 1,000. And going from that to a campus that has like, I think over 20,000 undergrad, if I'm not mistaken, it's enormous. And so I just felt really insignificant and like, I don't know how to make myself matter, like in this giant sea going from like a little pond. And I didn't even feel like a big fish in that pond, but I felt like more than, I don't know, like plankton that was about to get eaten up, which is how I felt on a big campus. So those are some of the things that kind of shocked me about going to college.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of more throughout your college career, how did you handle transitions like that and continue to, because that's a lot of new things that life is throwing at you. And I feel like, yeah, a lot of people don't talk about it. We're like, obviously, yeah, college is a big change, but we don't like send kids off to college always prepared to handle those like changes.
Yeah, and I don't know how you can prepare them, like,
Yeah.
because until you're in the situation, like, you're like, yeah, it's hard, or yeah, there's going to be a lot of change, but like, what do you really, you don't, like, so I had the privilege and good fortune and ability to study abroad, and I guess a good comparison is like, I had taken Spanish classes
Mm-hmm.
and done pretty well in them, but needing Spanish to survive, like to live your life, is so different than like, oh yeah, like I can speak Spanish like for fun. I think it could be compared to like preparing for college. It's like, yeah, I know how to do different things and like I can think critically and I know how to pass a test. But then when being a student becomes like your primary identity, like you don't have your
Mm-hmm.
family around you, you need to like, you know, I don't know, make friends independently, like all on your own. I didn't join like a Greek system or anything like that. So some
Mm-hmm.
people do that to make friends quickly. And so, yeah, like when you need to do those things to survive, I think the pressure is so different. And like, it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate to do that to children, like, you know, people under age 18, unless of course they go to boarding school. And I
Mm-hmm.
bet those kids are way more prepared for college than I was. But I'm sorry, what was the question?
It's okay. I was just asking like how you continued to handle transitions throughout college and
Oh, sure.
tough
Yeah,
moments and whatnot.
yeah. I'm really lucky to have like a pretty good relationship. It's even better now, actually, way better than it was in college, but with my family. So
Mm-hmm.
I continue to like emotionally lean on my parents as needed. Definitely was still like asserting my independence, but they were there if I needed somebody to talk to. And then friends for sure, like I felt bad or like guilty when I would feel, you know, like depressed or anxious or have trouble. But my friends were very supportive. And I think, I don't know if I felt that pressure to always be happy or positive because I'm like a woman or if it's just who I am. But I think people receive you better when you're happy. And so it was difficult, but you know, just leaning on friends and talking with them about like, this is really hard. And I saw other friends go through struggles. Like I had one friend who, you know, got mono one semester and had to like take a medical leave of absence. And, you know, she was really depressed then because she's like, I could have just as easily dropped out. And, you know, we're not close anymore, but she's done so many great things with her life since then. So I think realizing that like I could show up for other people just as well as they could show up for me helped me to feel less like a basket case if I did need support. That really helped a lot. And then I don't really know if there's anything else major. Honestly, like your friends just become your family. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess trusting my own judgment. Like sometimes it would take me longer than I would have liked, but like realizing like, ooh, this class isn't for me, or like this living situation isn't for me. And eventually I would listen to myself and like make a change or get out of it. But I guess I didn't really realize until later how much I kind of was raised to like fit or go along with the status quo. And so when I wanted to do something that was kind of against the grain, it was like fighting what I had been like, what had been nurtured in me, like the nature
Mm-hmm.
versus nurture thing. And so I definitely did have inner conflict when it was like, okay, you have to stand up for yourself, even though, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you did enroll for this class or you did commit to this living situation, and say like, yeah, but it's not the right thing for me. And so like, I need to advocate for myself, because if I don't, no one else will.
Mm-hmm. That I think that's a super important lesson, that sometimes it does take a lot of time to like slowly you notice it, I feel like. After it's not something that you like are always born with. It's like after a couple situations or a couple changes, then you're like, oh, like, I need to use my voice, and my voice can do a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, um, yeah, I think it can kind of like, I don't necessarily believe that everybody's like born a quote unquote like good person or something like that. Like, I think it comes down to like who's raising us and who we're surrounded by, like what might seem normal. Like a life of crime might
Mhm,
seem normal if you're being raised by somebody who makes their living that way.
mhm,
Um, and morals are all relative and all that. But I think that you figure out over time, you know, like um, what works well for you and what's true for you and what's not.
mhm,
And um, when it comes to finding your voice, that is a tricky one, because I don't know, you know, how other people watching this were raised, but like I was taught to respect authority. And it
mhm,
was, this is jumping way ahead, but after college, like probably 5 or 6 years after college, I moved to California and I lived there for a couple years. And I had such an enlightening, but it was a very like meta level conversation with a coworker who was telling me, you know, like the way you did things in Chicago, because I had trained with our Chicago team,
mhm,
doesn't translate well here. And like, I need to tell you about the way we're educated here and
mhm,
the way that we view like change and innovation, and we're not fearful of it, and we're taught to question authority, and that's normal. And
mhm,
like that was so foreign to me, because I was just like, wait, what? Like, you don't just respect somebody because they tell you that you're supposed to, or because of their position of power. And so that was like a very like, I don't know, like underbelly level like
mhm,
conversation that I had never had, but it really helped me to see like, oh yeah, I was raised to like do things a certain way and not question it. And that can serve you well for a while, but I think if you want to make things happen that aren't going to happen otherwise, like you might need to do things differently and like speak up, and also have good justification for why you want to do what you do. Like, it's not
mhm,
like, well, I've worked for 10 years, so I deserve for you to listen to me. It's like, nope, at every stage, like I'm going to need to
mhm.
continue to justify what I do, how I do it, why I do it. Yeah, I don't know. This got philosophical.
No, that was great though. That I like that. I think it's cool that you were able to have that conversation with the coworker, and that transition from like even the different locations. It's always interesting how people learn certain, I don't want to say like life lessons, but how you get enlightened is like different for everybody. Like a conversation with this person, or you move here, you do that. Um, that's crazy that you were able to like unlearn and learn new things.
Yeah, and it's a constant process. Like, I feel like that's something that I need to remind myself every day, is like, you're never like good. Like, it's never like, check, I've
Hmm.
unlearned racism, or I've
Yeah.
learned respect for authority. Like, you do still, I don't think racism ever has a place in, you know, in modern day world or
Hmm.
any world, but respect for authority is necessary. Like, you know, if you need to get a loan or like, you know, there's lots of scenarios where you do.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's this, I think of it almost like a tide. Like, you know, it's never like, oh, this singular like strip of water like rolling in and like going back out. It's like, it's messy. Like, there's
Hmm.
there's water that's going out at the same time that there's water receding. And it's the same with our lessons. Like some of them we are unlearning, like sending back out, and some of them we're, needing to learn. And it's like a constant like sifting.
Mm-hmm. It's a good comparison.
Thanks.
And so kind of going off of that, we skipped ahead more towards later on post-college. Let's continue with that.
Sure.
How was it transitioning out of college and now into like industry and the workforce?
Sure. Yeah. So for transitioning from college to after college, I lucked out actually right after I had studied abroad. I got back and found a job posting that listed like an internship in Chicago, paid, working in an agency, and was like, oh, that sounds cool. Like I want to do that. And so I applied for it not knowing if I'd get it, and I did. So that was really awesome for me. But I mean, I don't know how much of it was luck and how much of it was like, I deserved that opportunity. But that internship between my junior and senior year did end up leading to that company extending me a full-time offer during my senior year. So I had a job offer. I was one of those lucky seniors, and moved down to Chicago from Madison. Like that agency called me like the week of final exams and were like, we know what client you're going to be on. Like, can you come down now? And I was like, no, I'm taking exams. And so they were like, okay, how about, in 2 or 3 weeks? And I was like, yeah, 3 weeks would be good because I don't have a place yet. So yeah, I went down there and found a place on Craigslist, and based on the timing of when it was available, I actually ended up like staying on a friend's couch for a week or two until that was ready. And yeah, that was my move. It was another leap of faith. I mean, I knew that I had a job, but I didn't know my roommates. I had some friends from the internship, but I mean, I didn't know like a lot of people. So it was a big step.
Mm-hmm. And then after Chicago, you went to San Francisco. Was that was the next leap?
That was the trajectory. Yeah. So I was in Chicago for almost 4 years and worked first at the large agency and then got tired of big corporate pace. Like it was a multinational agency and really, kind of like, this is what you do when you're brand new and this is what you get to do after you've been here for a few years. And I was impatient and didn't want to wait for that. So I worked for a friend. That worked well until it didn't. And then when we went our separate ways, I came across an opportunity with someone that I knew from college was building a team. And that was at a coding boot camp. And so I trained with her and her team in Chicago, and then ultimately moved out to San Francisco to have that role, which I was in for 2 years.
And then do you mind talking a bit more about working for a friend and like the pros and cons of that?
Sure.
Like what you learned from that experience?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say I think it's a good idea. Of course, this will be like, do what I didn't do, or like do as I say, not as I do, but like have some uncomfortable try to have as many uncomfortable conversations before it starts about like what's okay and what's not, like boundary setting, I guess, and intention setting before it starts. It was really awkward to start, and eventually we hit like a good rhythm, but it's certainly changed our friendship. I mean, we are no longer friends. But yeah, I think it's really different when you go into business with someone like, hey, we're in this together and we're both taking this risk and we're equals. Whereas like I was quitting my corporate job and like she had been on her own for a little bit starting her thing, and I was her first like contractor. And so I was giving up a stable job to go and do that. So that was scary as hell for me and for her. So, we definitely did have some conversations before we started, but in hindsight, I wish we would have had more. And the only other thing I can say is don't agree to be in your friend's wedding if you also work together. Because
Oh my gosh.
yeah, she ended up getting engaged like a couple months after I started working for her, and asked me to be in the wedding, and I said yes. And the wedding was, you know, like a year and change later, and by then our working relationship had changed a lot, and I was like, I'm in this wedding. This is like a personal and professional obligation now. So a lot of things had changed, and yeah, it just it led to us being tied together on multiple fronts, and I was just like, oh, this is really uncomfortable now. Like, so don't do that. Learn from my mistakes, but yeah, do what you can. I mean, I guess it's I hate to say this, but like, know which one is more important to you, like your work or your friendship, because like she was a true friend before we started working together, and I don't think either of us like wishes each other ill will now, but we are no longer friends. And that was really hard. Like it was really hard once we realized like, oh, this isn't a fit, like, because our relationship had become based on work. And yeah, so that was a tough reality. I don't necessarily recommend working for a friend. Maybe going into business with a friend is different. I would assume it is, but it just changes the dynamics, because you're supposed to be an equal with your friend, and that wasn't really the case anymore.
Wow. That is a rough experience. I feel like you probably learn a lot, but it's also tough to navigate all those different types of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of wondering, I want to hear kind of how you ended up what you are doing now. I know, and I want to be mindful of time too. But could you talk a little bit about how you like jumped from Chicago to San Francisco, and then now you're back and you're at IC Stars?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for being mindful of time. I did get a call scheduled like after we planned this for 1:00, so I'll have to jump off then. But yeah, so San Francisco was kind of a startup-y job. It was acquired, but still like in constant transition and flux. And they ended up shutting down the boot camp. Their funder did, or owner did, like 7 months after I left the company. But made some great relationships, learned so much, similar to working for a friend where you learn so much. Took some time off to travel. And then when I ran out of money from traveling, I came home and thought I would just stay for a bit, but there were some things that I kind of needed to do some, like, I don't know, like nurturing of my relationships with my family that I had kind of just like left behind because I wasn't nearby. And so I realized like, okay, that's what this chapter is about right now. And then almost a year, I guess maybe 8 or 9 months after I had come back, and I had no plans to stay permanently, but I did. I came across the job with IC Stars and was like, hold on, like this is really similar to the job I did at the coding boot camp, but it's a nonprofit, and it's helping improve like a community that I really care about. Because I really cared about parts of San Francisco, but I didn't really feel a part of it the way, of course, you do with the area where you were born and raised. So jumped at that, and now I work talent placement manager at this organization called IC Stars. So it's my responsibility to build relationships with local employers and support our participants in the job search after the program. We don't have like a guaranteed job placement, but we try to build relationships with employers. So it's an easier on-ramp from our program, where we equip them with a lot of the same skills that you do for a coding boot camp, but with a lens on like leadership and equity and inclusion, an on-ramp from that into a workplace, whether that be a corporate environment or someplace else.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're back in Milwaukee.
Me too, and I'm so glad to have met you. That's Kara and I met kind of indirectly through my work, so we know a lot of the same people. And you know, I know people at the Commons, which she's worked for, and we also have someone in common who introduced us through this event series that I was invited to help him put on, and so that's where we finally met. And
Milwaukee's community is just like, I don't know, it's so nice.
it's special. It's really special. Like the way, the like not so, I don't know, sophisticated way of saying it is like people here give a damn.
Yeah.
And it shows. Like I feel it. And like on the flip side, it's small, so like word travels quick. Like everybody knows everybody, but people do show up for each other, and it feels so good.
Yeah, it really does. Thank you. I would love to talk more, but I know we have a meeting, but thank you so much for sharing like your transitions and your leaps and your risks and everything that you've learned. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tara. I really appreciate the opportunity. And if anybody who watches this, I don't know where it's airing, but if anybody like has interest, they can always like at me and I can answer questions for them. But I really appreciate the opportunity, and I love what you're doing both with this video series and the energy that you bring to your work. So thank you for bringing me into the fray of our community.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yes, I will tag you and I'll let you know where it's all posted.
Perfect.
All right. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Have a great day.
See ya.
Okay, bye-bye.